Thanks for sharing your interesting story. I mean, not to mention also you have a podcast which also covers some of the interesting topics from other guests. Some could be related to public speaking, but some could be related to engineering as well. So you mentioned that you learn from your experience, maybe the hard way, right? But tell us maybe the first thing, why is it important for all engineers to start thinking about doing public speaking? What's so special about this public speaking?
Typically, the people who are the communicators are the ones who are visible within companies. You don't want to be the engineer sitting in his or her cubicle mad because somebody else got the promotion and pay raise you thought you deserved. But you weren't networked within the company. You weren't visible. You weren't talking to anyone. You thought that just being technically proficient was enough, but it's never been enough. You have to be an advocate for yourself, because not as if the decision makers are looking at you all the time to figure out what your career progression should be. You have to be the person that's driving that. A great way to do that is by being adept at presenting in front of other people and just showing your expertise.
So if we take a lot of software engineers, so my background is a lot more software engineering. A lot of software engineers, when they start their job, they think their job is to just write code, right? And sit there churning out stories after stories and probably doing some demo, but that's about it, right? They don't think about public speaking. But there are opportunities, like you mentioned, when you had to present to your C-levels or whatever that is. So maybe if you can give some kind of tips to those engineers who still think writing code is the only job for them and they don't have to do anything else like presenting. Maybe some tips how they should start thinking about doing this public speaking.
Well, look for opportunities to do it for sure. And then once you are given those opportunities, really give some thought as to the audience that you're going to be speaking in front of. When I first started giving presentations, I think one of the main reasons I ended up being quite sweaty by the end of these presentations, because I didn't take into account what the people in the audience needed to know from me at the end of the presentations. I would just slap slides together, get up there, read them, and try to get out there as quickly as possible. But I never got out there as quickly as possible because, as I mentioned, I'd often would get questions afterwards I thought I had answered. So I'm a big fan of really taking into account what these people need from you. When I was giving presentations in front of management, what I ended up doing was going to the senior management's admins. It's very difficult to get time with the senior managers because they're busy. But if you go to their administrative assistants, they very well know what this person wants in a presentation. So you go and ask them, what kind of information do I need to have in this presentation for your boss to pay attention? And then you make sure that you have that type of information within your presentation. So that's one thing. Another thing that I would mention is timing. I don't think a lot of people really give this as much credence as it deserves, but these are busy people. I mentioned that I had to give presentations in front of management, but it wasn't just me. Every project that was going on within the company was being presented on. This was a full day affair, this presentation after presentation after presentation. So it was really important to take time into account, or else the agenda for that day is just going to go off the rails. So if you're given 15 minutes to give a presentation, practice it so that not only that you finish within the 15 minutes, but that you leave a bit of buffer in the event that you say something during the presentation that you didn't practice. So if you're given 15 minutes, practice so that you finish within 14, so you have a minute to play with. Another tip I would offer is try to minimize the technical jargon that you would use amongst your colleagues, especially if you're talking to a non-technical audience. They may very well not understand what you're talking about. They may not ask. And if they do not ask, that's a bad sign. It's a red flag because they may not even listen to your presentation in the first place. And if they do ask, well, now you've essentially wasted time in having them have to ask those type of questions. You could have used more commonly used words in your presentation to begin with, or at least explain what the technical jargon that you were using meant during the presentation.
Thanks for those tips. So for those of you who want to practice more public speaking, maybe you can practice some of those tips that Neil just shared.